So now we've got a fellow who runs the Bank of America advertising, head of enterprise and planning and measurement is Lou's official title. Lou spends a lot of time thinking about data. But anyway, in addition to that, Lou is one of the terrific guys and the great personalities in this business. And what you're going to tell us, hopefully, about Lou is not only your experience from American Express, but now being at a bank where in all that's going on in the media and advertising world, you've got kind of some strict operations and government and other regulations that you've got to stick to in your new role. So I hope you'll tell us a little bit about that, and thank you so much for joining us, Lou. Lou Paskalis, give him a hand.
How's everybody doing today? I want to start off actually by thanking Barry and the fellow members of the DPAA for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of Bank of America to all of you today. But not just for that, also the opportunity to follow one of my mentors in Erwin Gottlieb and precede another one of my mentors in John Costello, who graciously moved aside so I could present because I have to be across town at 1 o'clock speaking to my vice chairman. So I will be off like a prom dress after this is over. And I hope you'll forgive me that. But I also owe the DPAA a third debt of gratitude. I work in a 53-story office tower adjacent to Bryant Park, and for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've had the pleasure of experiencing not only friends and colleagues, but also complete strangers looking at the Captivate screen, glancing sideways at me, looking back at the Captivate screen, then staring broadly at me, then looking at the Captivate screen, pointing, giving me the thumbs up, and smiling because that was my face. So, as someone who has been in the media industry for nearly 3 decades, it is a massive testament to the power of place-based advertising, and it was an object lesson. So somewhere I have a clicker, and I buried it. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the value of customer relationships. And this is an incredibly important thing for a company like Bank of America, where we have a trust-based business that touches 1 out of 2 households in this country. We are in a relationship business because we are in a trust-based business. And we are in a lifetime business because, unlike some other categories, you don't come into our store every 3 or 5 or 7 years. You're on our app or in our retail environments almost every day. And I almost love this quote from Seth Godin. It's just missing 2 words. I would say our job as marketers is to connect with people, to interact with them in a way that leaves them better than we found them, more able to get where they'd like to go. And this, you really, I think, when you start to understand how marketing is evolving, this is really a fundamental core. We are in the enablement business. We are in the empowerment business. And we have to be in these businesses for a variety of reasons. We are competing for attention like never before. Frequency-based advertising does not compete in an era where the consumer is the publisher, and the technology that we have put in the hands of consumers today allows them to really challenge the forced viewing economy. Now, I would say most of you in this room today from the DPAA have some systemic advantages on the forced viewing issue. But nonetheless, you have evolved your platforms, and you are now creating experiences that are much more immersive and responsive to the people that might be standing 2 feet or 2 meters in front of your platform. But all in all, in order for us to actually land the plane, we really have to understand that it is no longer a 51st dates messaging environment where I just repeat and repeat and repeat the message. It is a dialogue, not a monologue, and we have to recognize that. For Bank of America, this kind of leads right into our core business strategy. Focusing on relationships is the core to our responsible growth strategy and has been for a long time. Responsible growth is the foundation of our entire business strategy. It's a commitment to shareholders, it's a commitment to employees, and it's a commitment ultimately to every one of our customers who trust us with their business. And it's a lifetime commitment. The major theme of this is understanding customer needs more completely. And we've gotten really good at that from understanding signal that we get in the retail banking environment, understanding signal that we get in our web-based environments, understanding signal that we get in our mobile app. But now, and the exciting part for me, for someone who has always been the third-party guy in that conversation, is we're now starting to connect all of the signal that we get from all the platforms that are off the BAC campus and starting to get a more complete picture of our customers' needs, their mindset, their motivation. And it's really exciting. It really is, I mean, it's the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup moment of marketing, because we know so much about our customers today from the actions that we embark on with them, from the things that they do on our platform. But now understanding at a more granular level, on a more deterministic level, in a privacy-compliant, anonymized way, but nonetheless understanding interests and needs and hopes and dreams, it gives us the opportunity to really deliver value for a lifetime. But it also requires us to really rethink some of the bedrock principles that we've used in marketing, which was really based on a probabilistic model, where we're now competing based on a much more value-added deterministic model. So the KPI really changes. The KPI changes from efficient advertising to drive business to actually a relationship metric that over time drives loyalty, drives advocacy, and ultimately, I think, competes for attention. We've all seen the Harvard loyalty loop in various configurations. I remember reading this article in December of 2010 when it first came out. I was probably having a cup of coffee and fist pumping at my dining room table with no one around me, because I'm like, yes! But this is really the key to everything that marketers today have to do. We have to first and foremost create something that is a solution for someone's need. Not a product, a solution. And once we understand the use cases for that solution, we have to position it in front of that consumer when there is signal, when there is context to do that. And this is an obvious thing, but it's an important change from how we used to think about advertising. My partners in technology put a slide up not too long ago, and I was so moved by it. And it said, today, behavior trumps context. And tomorrow, context will trump behavior. And I sat there and I said, geez, that's really important, because, you know, if you think about how advertising works, we're looking at previous behaviors and we're saying, oh, this person is a shoe intender, so let's show them a shoe ad, with very little regard for what might be on their mind right now. So I asked my colleague, I said, that's great, where did you get that? And he said, you said it 2 meetings ago, and we've been thinking about it ever since, and it's so right. And, you know, it's one of those moments, I have Alzheimer's, I forget half of everything I ever said, as you'll see as this presentation goes along. But it's so important to understand that for this loyalty loop to really work, you've got to create solutions, you've got to present them to people when they need them, you've got to make sure those solutions really deliver on the value proposition, and then you cultivate advocacy. But the thing that's missing from this, and the thing that I think is the add-on in the 6 or so years since this really emerged on the scene as a fundamental underpinning, is advocacy is only part of the value add. Advocacy and attention for the marketers, the attention being the underlying principle of the ongoing relationship, the attention being the thing we are competing for, and what I like to refer to as the post-advertising era. That's really the ultimate. So create great solutions, understand the mindset and motivation of customers on a more granular level, and immediately, right now, what are their needs right now? Ensure that you deliver on that solution, unlock the power of that advocacy, and then cultivate the relationship with ongoing value to it. And I'll talk about that in a few slides in terms of how we get there. So we all know this story. Every industry is really being disrupted by technology, and I think this is the new norm. Shelley Palmer has a great quote that, you know, the rate of change we are experiencing today is the lowest rate of change we will experience for the rest of our lifetimes. This is the new norm. And if you're not actively disintermediating yourself, trust me, somebody already did. Not is, did. And so for us, this is really about value exchange. And how are we continuously raising the bar in the value exchange? Whether it's the 21 million customers for Bank of America who have our mobile app and who are on that platform multiple times a day, doing everything from checking balances to learning to transact. How can we create more value in that experience? How can we ultimately deliver beyond the table stakes? The table stakes today our more efficient, more transparent transaction. That is really a big draw for this big paper tiger in the financial services industry called fintech. So fintech is, at last I looked, 1,200 companies with about $27 billion in venture-backed capital that are looking at one or more of the 9 core businesses in financial services and saying, we can make this easier for customers. And we welcome that challenge. We love that because it pushes us to think ahead of the curve. It pushes us out of our comfort level. It makes us think about, okay, what can we really do? But ultimately, in the long run, technological innovation, though disruptive, is greens fees. You better be disintermediating yourself. Campbell Soup was saying that 50 years ago. If we're not obsoleting our own products and flavors, then somebody else is going to do it for us. And it's just as true today. The key, though, is to understand the softer side of the business, the emotional connectivity between your brand and your customers. And it's to cultivate that and recognize there's true value in that. And so as we focus on disruption as an opportunity to serve our customers better, we also want to make sure that our brand values come through. So this is kind of part and parcel of that. Channels are proliferating at an unbelievable level. Digital video alone seems to have morphed 3 times this week. And I think we're all trying to figure out what's going to happen with AT&T and Time Warner. But as we evolve from a broadcast mindset to a narrowcast mindset to an audience of one mindset, we really have the opportunity to have an ongoing relationship, not a campaign mindset, but something that is always on, something that we're always adding value to. So it really is an environment now where signal, context, environment where we're delivering the message, all of these things start to impact how we tell our story. And I want to emphasize that so often in the past, how we tell our story was a straight line to advertising. And I think now for most marketers, how we tell our story includes advertising, but more so than ever before is not limited to that. And I think with the help of some of the people in this room, we're going to create new experiences. We're going to look more towards content-based opportunities and utility-based opportunities. And the 3 of those things, content, utility, and advertising, in totality will make better experiences for consumers. So we want to do 3 things really that I'm going to take you through in the next 8 minutes and 16 seconds. Wow, I got to get going. More enriching content and storytelling, more seamless experience for customers, and better personalization. And I just went backwards. It's the green button, Lou. Okay, so this is a little bit of an overview on how we are approaching storytelling. So yeah, I think you guys have all seen the stats. 80% of people today who can skip an ad will skip an ad. Today in the United States, 25% of people on mobile have an ad blocker installed, going to 32% by the end of next year. So I've got to find a different way to get my message out. One of the things that we're very committed to as part of our Responsible Growth Initiative is a program called Better Money Habits. Better Money Habits is about providing financial education to millennials in a way that doesn't feel like eat your vegetables. Okay, and so our problem statement is how can we get millennials to really care about, hey, what all that stuff on the right-hand side of your pay stub is. Hey, you know, what's the difference between investing for an immediate need and investing for a lifetime goal? And how do I budget for the 2? So we went to our friends at Vice and said, hey, you know what? We've got this great platform. We've got a lot of wonderful video content. We really see it working, but people aren't clicking on the ads to watch the content. Can you help? And 11 days later, they called us back, and they showed us a pilot that they had shot that was an entirely different program called The Business of Life, which was designed by and for millennials, and which ultimately, in the simplest terms, functions as an ad for Better Money Habits. But you would never describe it that once you see the experience, because it's a 22-minute program where there's a roundtable discussion around the financial issues facing consumers. And at the end of that 22 minutes, you can watch another episode if you're in a digital environment, or you can watch the Better Money Habits program from Bank of America, don't slap the microphone, which actually pays off the issue. And we actually made up a word for it, and we fell in love with the word. We call it pre-contexting. With the Business of Life, we pre-context the very topics that Better Money Habits, our program, is trying to educate millennials on. And it worked phenomenally well. I have a very short video which I am going to cue now. To the
In 2014, Bank of America partnered with Vice News to bring education and fresh perspectives on the financial issues facing the millennial generation. The business of life was told through the facts, figures, dollars, and cents that shape our world.
This is the business of life.
This is not a left versus right. This is a sort of knowledgeable versus ignorant view.
Hosted by journalist Michael Moynihan, each episode brought together an eclectic panel of writers, thinkers, and experts to make common sense of the most complicated topics of our day. With tapings in 7 cities across the country, The Business of Life consisted of 11 episodes spanning topics from the disappearing middle class.
We used to have a way of life, it's gone.
To the student debt crisis.
The U.S. Department of Education makes $50 billion in profit off of our student loans.
To the modern American family.
I think the idea that a successful marriage is one that always lasts isn't always the case anymore.
With fearless content, engaging hosts, and an innovative new format, the show made an instant splash. Hosted on YouTube, The Business of Life amassed over 5 million views through multiple platforms, including TV, tablet, mobile phone, and game console. Users were engrossed, spending an average of 16 minutes and 20 seconds on the hub's pages, with 1 in every 5 users watching the full 22-minute episode to completion.
I think that I'm going to desperately try to be a YouTube star now.
Viewers heavily engaged with the series on social media, with over 9.6 million impressions on Facebook and 2.5 million impressions on Twitter. Wherever The Business of Life was played, Bank of America's Better Money Habits message was amplified. These unprecedented figures made The Business of Life one of the most engaged with series on Vice News. And engagement didn't stop there.
All right, let's look at this next number, which localizes this issue a little bit.
Users who visited BetterMoneyHabits.com after watching The Business of Life consumed 3 times more Better Money Habits content and spent nearly twice as long on BetterMoneyHabits.com. Those who watched The Business of Life felt more favorably about Bank of America, with an increase in favorability of 24% compared to users who weren't aware of the show.
I think that's cool that they're outreaching to educate people, because that's what Vice does. I mean, it's educational.
The show is great. I've seen episodes of this before. I'm a huge fan of Vice.
He is the columnist for the Daily Beast and host of The Business of Life on Vice News. I'm familiar with them. Michael Moynihan. Hey, Michael.
From outspoken political pundit Bill Maher to industry experts at Adweek and the cultural elite at Variety, Business of Life found fans across the board. Over the 7-month rollout, the show amassed more and more returning fans with each episode, and with breakthrough success became a beacon of millennial finance media.
This is literally, and I'm not joking, maybe the single most important thing in the world.
This is the business of life.
All right, so apparently that was a long video. Sorry about that, but you get the gist. That was after year 1. So we renewed. We're on season 2 now. We're in development. We've expanded from a digital platform to a TV and digital platform. It's a mobile platform. We've got all sorts of side content. The key is it was founded on insights, and it was founded on insights about the audience we were trying to serve, and it didn't start with, hey, we want people to watch a video. It started with the understanding that this is a mission for the bank. We need to understand what the real needs are, and we need to meet them. We also learned that we need to create more seamless experiences and connect budgeting tools and all the other things that are pain points for millennials immediately to the viewing experience as opposed to in a separate part of the bank's website. Personalization is a real issue. 80% of millennials traditionally skip ads when they can. 64% of millennials who engage with content from a brand marketer that they feel is relevant to them are much more likely to do business with that brand marketer. That's me going really fast through those slides. But there are still issues here. As we think about how we are going to personalize, we cannot do this in a silo. We really need to do this across the organization. We like to use the term orchestration because if you think of it, that's exactly what we're doing. We're ensuring that all parts of the orchestra are playing in harmony and creating one great experience for the customer. You can't have one part of the business with a frequency cap mindset over here, another part of the business with a more content-oriented mindset over here. You really have to put audience owners between all of that content that your company wants to publish and that audience and act as their advocate, act as the strategist to ensure, just like the DJ in the room at the disco, I'm dating myself, the audience is not getting inundated with too many personalized messages from too many parts of your business. So I'm going to go through 5 rules of the road in less than a minute. First of all, it takes a village. Bottom line, if your best friend isn't the person who runs technology and your other best friend isn't the person who runs analytics in your company as a marketer, you're not doing your job anymore. I cannot actually start a sentence without my colleague in analytics or my colleague in technology finishing it for me. And they're the same with me, because we really understand that we win or lose as a team. It cannot be, oh, those people. So meet your technology partner, meet your analytics partner, and realize that your bonus is based on your collaboration. We've got to stop thinking of this customer mindset. Think about people. Think about audience needs. Think very granularly about those needs, and make sure that you have the ability to segment dynamically, if possible, to really understand the signal. The signal gets better every day. How are we changing the way that we use that signal every day to meet customers where they need us and give them solutions that fit their needs? Think story first. Don't start out with a product. Think like, how are we going to tell a story that people will care about and will share? And ultimately, when you do that, you realize that most stories will not be about your products, your brand, your services, but they will be stories the audience cares about, and you can present them in any format, and you can present them as the hero without invading the content. And so it's really understanding when and how to present your brand in the context of an immersive story experience. This is really hard for people because in a short run, that might not sell a product. In the long run, it builds the relationship by demonstrating you share that audience's values, you understand their needs, and you're thinking about what's of interest to them instead of what's of interest to self. You have to have a single view across the organization, the analytics organization, a technology organization, and we call it new solutions development. We used to call it new product development. But it's all about creating solutions, and we all have to have the same sheet music. Again, go back to the orchestration model. You can't have different sheet music and different KPIs and different metrics in different parts of the organization. You have to have, and it's a hard set of conversations, and it's a fence that you're always mending. But once you get to this point where you've got a single view across the entire organization, it's impossible to do something that is not of service to that customer. And very proud of this. This was a long journey, but we're all singing off the same sheet music. And the last and final slide that I'll share with you today is measure what matters. I think one of the mistakes that we've made in this industry is the proliferation of data. This year and next year, more data will be created than in all of human history, right? So measuring all that new stuff, maybe not so interesting. I think we have a tendency in our industry to look for proxies, and easy proxies don't necessarily lead to great results. And I will tell you, work hard to understand the new metrics of relationship. Work hard to understand the components of favorability. Work hard to understand what is relevant to people and really bias towards that. And those diagnostic metrics of reach and frequency that have been so important to every one of us that got us here, I don't think are going to get us to the next stage of the relationship with customers. And so I encourage you to reorient how you're thinking about the ROI on marketing, how you're thinking about the ROI on advertising differently, and recognize that that return is on the relationship, not the transaction. So I leave you with this. The future is now. Relationships are the currency, and we have what we need to deliver and to compete for attention. And I thank you for your time.
Leave that, we'll pick it up. Lou, that was fabulous. I got 2 quick questions for you before you go to your chairman. And this is great. Evidently, a very thoughtful presentation and thoughtful marketing strategy that you employ every day.
Did you love evidently, by the way? Evidently.
Evidently. Let me start at macro, at the big picture, and then granular. On the macro level, you talk a lot about relationships with customers. As in your role, and evidently you also talked about a lot of collaboration within the bank, do you have the ability and the connection to speak to the banking internal folks in terms of developing consumer products? Do you have any input into that, and how does that work? Because it's a huge organization.
Yeah, it is a huge organization, and you're constantly meeting new people that are your colleagues. But the point of it is, yes, and actually the people in this room contribute to that role, because I have a set of signal that I get from the advertising investments I make that we can't replicate in on-us environments. So on bankofamerica.com, on our mobile app, We get a lot of signal there. But I don't know that Barry likes to sail and I'm a Formula One fan and all these other things that help us contextualize messaging and content experiences and ultimately provide utility. So I've gone from the third-party guy to, hey, I'll bet we have that information in another part of the organization.
That's great.
So it is. It's a relationship based on value exchange inside the bank, and that's the same thing we're trying to create outside the bank.
That's great to hear and encouraging for everybody in advertising. And the last and second question on more of a granular level. So the Vice program looked fantastic. You build relationships, you give guidance and advice to millennials. What were the specific kind of ad connections? I saw a logo, probably links. Where else do you insert back? Because it's very subtle.
Yeah, it's really, so most of the views of that actually come in YouTube. And so what we do is we insert something called a dynamic end frame at the end of the Vice program. So at the end of 22 minutes, and at the end you have this choice close, which is watch another episode of The Business of Life, watch an episode of Better Money Habits that explains in more detail these issues and gives you our advice, and then a third choice, which is a wild card. And by giving people a choice all the way, you have the choice not to finish, and we're taking a bet that they're going to go to the end, right? And Vice has shown us that people will sit in front of their computer and watch 22 minutes of content. So we make it their choice because we're playing long ball. Whether or not they watch it today, tomorrow, or next week, we ultimately will have enough pre-contexting programs and enough value-added branded events that will create an experience, and ultimately we hope millennials will find value in that. And we're seeing that. I mean, it's not an inexpensive program to replace ads with 22-minute links of content. The ROI is through the roof if you want to look at viewable metrics. And those were some early numbers. It's really grown since then.
Some media is important partners here, as we can see. As you exit the stage, Mark Kidd, the CEO of Captivate, wants to shake your hand over there. And this is a man who's seen himself on elevator screens all over. And I can't thank you enough, Lou. Fabulous.
Thank you.